Welcome to Energize and Revitalize with Dr. Amy. I'm Dr. Amy Coopersmith, a doctorate prepared nurse practitioner, and this show is about empowering you to live a radiant, healthy, and balanced life. I'm very excited to introduce today's guest, Dr. Trish Giaccone.
Welcome. Hello.
Hello. Trish has a bachelor's degree in supervision and management from Daytona State College, a master's degree in clinical mental health from Stetson University, and a PhD in psychology with a concentration in industrial organization from Liberty University. Trish is a licensed mental health counselor who also provides psychotherapy services in a private practice. She is the CEO of the Family Life Center as well. She's very busy.
Yes.
Well, I want to thank you for taking time to be here on our show today.
Well, thank you for inviting me. I'm looking forward to it.
Yes. So with industrial organization, what inspired you to pursue that line of work?
Interestingly enough, my work at the Family Life Center, I often tell people the workplace takes up such a significant amount of our time,
Yes.
and we come to work with our whole self. And so that old adage about check yourself at the door, leave home, that's not relevant anymore.
Right. Is that even possible?
It's not, it's really not possible. And so I was really interested in how workplace behaviors were manifested, what part of that was, the workplace stress, right? What part of that is actually workplace? What part of that is home life? And then how can we work towards a healthy balance?
Balance is so important with all aspects of health. But I feel like we haven't done a lot on emotional wellness yet on this show. So I'm so happy you're here so we can really talk about stress.
Yes.
I deal with a lot of working women and men. And when I say, how are you? And it's always, work, stress, always. No one ever comes in and says, oh, yeah, everything's great. Life is chill.
Yeah, work's great. And no, we often respond with it. And it has become such a normal quote unquote normal comment, right? Oh, I'm stressed. And people go, oh, okay. And they gloss right over it. And we don't really dig in to say, it's what is going on?
Right.
What's happening in your world so that we can, as colleagues, as friends, as family members, help to support someone in that moment.
Yeah. What do you think is causing all this stress?
Oh, gosh. I have to tell you, I think the biggest thing I see is unhealthy, unbalanced boundaries.
Oh.
I think that's the biggest.
Yes.
Now, that's a very broad stroke. But when when I talk about balance, we're not talking 50-50. And I think people think that. They go, oh, well, 50% of my time here and 50%. But again, that's not true. As a parent, we're a parent 100% of the time, whether we're at home, whether we're at the gym or at work. Which means when we are at work, we are considering our children in the school place, right? And with everything going on with schools, it adds to that level of stress and frustration and aggravation. So how focused are we at the work that we're doing? So, yeah.
Yeah, in our clinic, several of my employees and I had children at the same school around the same age, and we would hear the alerts come in, or one child would text, "Hey, there's a bomb threat," and so we'd all be,
right. It immediately increases our level of anxiety,
yes,
and concern for the safety and well-being of our children. So when that happens, again, how focused are we on the work at hand? Even though the work at hand is important, right? But in that moment, our focus is distracted. And it's not, the interesting thing is I because we're in such a time of immediacy, it's like, oh, well, the threat is gone. And so then, okay, everybody back to work. And the reality is it takes us a while to get reacclimated, and for some of us, it takes a little longer. The thought of the what ifs can sometimes creep in and really impact our day. And so it's important for us to know ourselves, to check in with ourselves, to really honor what we're feeling, even in the workplace. And I think that when we do that more, we're less likely to have errors in the workplace. We're less likely to have people leaving. We're less likely to experience burnout. But it starts with knowing thyself, right?
Yeah. And that's hard to do.
It is. It can be. It can be.
Are there certain professions or work environments that are more likely to have work-related stress?
I believe so. So I've worked with a lot of first responders, teachers, obviously with the recent climate, But interestingly enough, those in retail, fast food, those customer service
Okay.
jobs, they tend to have a lot of stress because there's a lot of stimulus coming at them at one time.
Right.
And construction workers are another one. My husband is in the construction field, and just really keeping up with the demand, the coworkers, and again the environment. So I think there's so many professions that experience workplace stress at a heightened level that we don't think of. So again, first responders, of course, with what they
Right.
see and what they do, but there's so many other sectors that really experience it in a similar way.
Yeah, I'm amazed if I'm, at in a retail environment or something, and I can hear how the person in front of me is speaking to this minimum wage employee,
Mm-hmm.
and like that person has no control over what you're upset about, but they
Mm-hmm.
think it's okay to be rude to that person.
Isn't it amazing if we just people watch and people listen, the level of rudeness that has increased?
Yeah.
And we do, there are people at the McDonald's or the Dunkin' Donuts, and they're working. That's their workplace. And don't get me wrong, we can get frustrated, timing, right? But the reality is that's a human being doing the best
Yep.
that they can in their job. And we don't know what that human is going through.
Right.
And so, that adage, kindness goes far. I mean, that's the truth, right? We just don't know. But think of the worker who is handing you whatever item that you just yelled at them for. Now they have another 6 or 7 or 8 cars, or 6 or 7 people in line. I mean, that's terrible for them. It really does. Unfortunately, it's that cycle. And it's hard for folks to walk away from the register or to take a break in the back. Not all jobs have that flexibility.
That's true. So what are some signs that a person should look for in themselves if they think they might be experiencing work stress? Like what might they see in themselves?
So first, let me start off with, I want to kind of give a definition of work stress, right? Because we use the term stress often also. And the idea is that, there's lots of frustrations that happen at work, right? So something didn't go the way we planned or the way we thought, and that's frustrating. But the work stress is essentially when we just don't have the capability, the ability to meet the demand of the role. And I often tell people sometimes employees don't even know what the role is, right? They're not clear on that. And so if we as an individual are not meeting that standard, and again, we may not know it, and we just feel like we don't have the resources, and it begins to encourage sometimes an increased heart rate, sometimes sweating, right? So some people, I know somebody who, when they get very anxious, they'll sweat extra sweat under their armpits. There are people who their hands sweat. So things like that. There may be some physical signs that you might notice about yourself. Other people, it may be some emotional signs, right? Where they seem really tired. So you're fatigued. You wake up in the morning and you think to yourself, oh God, I got to go to that place to work. Or your stomach starts hurting. You get to work, you're there an hour, you start cramping in your stomach and you think, God, I didn't eat anything. Or maybe I did and I'm still cramping. So there are, a variety of things to pay attention to. What I would say is it starts with asking yourself about yourself. And I don't think we do that often. Think about how when you're preparing yourself for your workday, we brush our teeth, we brush our hair. What are you thinking about? Right. And often we're thinking about other things, what the kids need, what I have planned for the day, what tasks am I responsible for? Well, those are all good things. Let's start with you first, right? What do I need today? What am I feeling today? Am I tired? Did I have a good night's rest? Did I, drink enough water? Am I hydrated? Did I do my exercises this morning? Or if I did I go too hard? What am I feeling? And if we start with where am I and what am I feeling, then we can proceed throughout the day and kind of checking in with ourselves, right? And I think once we do that, we become better acquainted with the way that our body works, the way that our mind is operating, and then we present ourselves with more intentionality, with a lot more desire and understanding of what am I feeling. We don't always show up to work 100%, let's be honest. But yet we want to present like we do, like everything is okay and everything is fine. And that's not accurate all of the time. So if you're feeling a little under the weather, that's okay. You can say that to yourself. Hey, you know what? I'm not 100% today. I'm not at this place where, I'm at that really robust, a gregarious personality. Maybe today I'm a little quieter. And it's okay to say that when you're in the workplace. Somebody says, "How are you?" Say, I'm, you know what? I'm not 100% today, and that's okay. But being honest with who you are in that statement, right? And so I think, to your point is, let's be intentional about asking ourselves questions, who we are, and then walking through life with some intentionality.
Right. So we start by acknowledging that maybe today is not a good day,
right?
Accepting it. And so what do we do from there? We're accepting that, okay, today's not my best. How do I proceed?
So if today is not your best, and you know that, right? We all know when we're not necessarily in the best place. The next step is then you walk with that intentionality I was talking about. I look at my calendar, right? And I am a calendar person because there's so much to do. And so I look at my calendar and what do I have on the agenda for the day? What are absolutes that I have to do? And then what are the things that are on my calendar that, maybe I don't have to do them today. And those are the ones that I say, I'm going to reschedule those, right? I'm going to move that off book maybe tomorrow, maybe next week. The things that I have to do, I get it, right? But the things that I don't have to do, today's probably not the best day to do that. Yeah. And if you're able to do that independently, great, kudos. But if you have a supervisor, then guess what? Talk to them and say to them, I am not at my 100% today. And so I was hoping I could move A, B, and C to another day. Or if that can be provided, offered to someone else to complete. And I'm confident that many supervisors would much rather have that conversation with you so that you're as healthy and happy as you can be in the workplace than if you are burnt out and then end up leaving.
I think that's such a huge thing. I'm blessed to have fantastic employees. We get a lot of positive feedback on that, but they do not want to let me down.
Right.
So if I get excited about something and I'm like, and do this and do this and do this, rather than say, hey, you're giving me too much, it'll get to a point where all of a sudden someone will say, my blood pressure. I'm like, okay, wait. And then I have to realize as a boss, check in with your employees. And I encourage that communication. Let me know when it's too much. But I think human nature, people don't want to say, I can't do it.
Right. Well, and when people say I don't want to or I can't, they really do have that fear of letting somebody else down whom they respect and admire. And so it is also incumbent upon those of us who have the responsibility of being leaders to check in. And rather than, assume that they're going to come to us, make it mutual. Say, oh, wait, I noticed that your calendar has, and I recently did this with one of my colleagues. I noticed your calendar has you scheduled for like 55 hours. And our work week is typically 40 hours. I mean, we work in a crisis environment, so I get some things happen. But the reality is we want to keep it as close to that 40 as possible. And it was interesting because they responded and said, hey, I didn't realize that you were looking at my schedule and, that you noticed that. And yes, it is something that we notice. So I think it's important about from leaders as well to check in with your team, to know that, to share with them that you care, right? You're modeling the behavior for them. And so if you want them to show care, you should also. So,
absolutely. Yeah. Well, I'm going to have you hold that thought.
Sure.
We're going to pause for a break from our sponsor. You're listening to Energize and Revitalize with Dr. Amy. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Energize and Revitalize with Dr. Amy. I'm Dr. Amy Coopersmith, and my guest today is Dr. Trish Giaccone. Before the break, we were talking about work-related stress and the role of the supervisor or the organization in checking in with employees. So how should the organization basically be held accountable for employee wellness?
So I think that one of the things that has to come into play is it is all of our responsibility as a team to really hold each other accountable. And I know that oftentimes we think, oh, it's the boss's responsibility or the CEO or the vice president. But the reality is that we collectively create that culture. And so when we talk about wellness, what is it that you need and or want? And maybe you don't exactly know. Maybe you think, I know I need something, but I don't know what the something is. I'm very stressed when I'm at work. I'm here, 12 hours a day. Okay, then sit down and have a brainstorming session with, those in your organization to say, what does it look like? Because, equitability doesn't mean everybody gets everything the same. And I think
Right.
people struggle with that. But the truth is that we have to have the conversation of what is in the best interest for those that we are working with. And so accountability is really a requirement for all of us to get involved with, right? And so if you as an employee, go to your supervisor and you sit down and say, these are these are the things I need. Then the expectation is that there's going to be some movement. Now, it may not always be as big of a movement as you'd like, but if you're going in the right direction of I'm starting to feel myself become more relaxed at work to where I'm more comfortable, then clearly it's going in the right direction. But if it's not, then say that. Because what happens is there's assumptions and lack of communication, and then it becomes troublesome. And we don't want that, right? You don't want that in the workplace. So the reality is having that dialogue and saying, okay, this is what my expectations are, and or this is what I'm thinking. How can we work towards a better schedule or additional benefits or flexibility, whatever the ick may be, right? How do we get to that? But we have to talk about it. I feel like I say that a lot. But we
communication.
Communication is
So
key.
important.
We're not mind readers, right? Supervisors are not mind readers. We don't know. And so help us learn you and your role in this environment better.
Yep. And I do find, I've been a boss in different scenarios. I find that when I, as a boss, listen and I say, I really want to know what you think. Just that in itself, even if I can't solve the problem, I can't necessarily fix everything. But I feel like if they know that they've been heard, then that goes a long way.
And this is where the authenticity comes into place. Particularly if a supervisor is saying, I want to know,
Yep.
then the idea is then share with them, right? Don't sugarcoat it. Don't gloss over it. Don't say I'm fine when you're not fine, because otherwise, then again, how do you know? We walk away from a conversation with different understandings of what happened in that conversation, and nothing really gets solved. And so it's really about that authenticity and honesty, right? That's the idea behind ethical workplace behaviors, is that we want to communicate authentically and honestly with one another.
Yep. I think a lot of people don't understand too that you can be honest without being offensive. So it's just the way that you say it, and of course, if you can't go at another person and say, you did this, this, and this, because that person will get defensive and it won't go well. But if you say, this is how I'm feeling, a lot of times it's perceived a little better.
Well, the whole idea in therapy about the I statements, right? We can't pretend to imagine what somebody else is feeling or doing, and we can't change them. The idea is we can identify what we are experiencing because we know ourselves, right? So I am feeling this way when, and I often tell people, have a scenario that happened to you so that you can describe it to that person. Because if someone says, I'm angry about, what happened yesterday. Okay, well, what happened yesterday, right? So it's really, or I'm offended by what you said. What did I say? That I'm wearing a yellow dress. Well, I don't see how that's offensive, right? But maybe it is for them. And say, well, this is why, or this is what I'm experiencing. So the idea is, making sure that we are communicating what it is I'm feeling, why I'm feeling that way. And I'm going to go one step further and recommend that you have a way to rectify that, right? At least an idea. Say, you know what, in the future, would you mind? Could you? And then proceed with whatever that idea might be. So, I once had a situation where someone came to me and said, Trish, you wave your arms a lot when you talk, which I do. I'm from New York. It happens. But it was something triggering for them. And they said, I feel, because I work with a lot of victims of domestic violence, they said, I feel like it's a trigger for me. And you know what? I can appreciate that. It's also hard for me because I work with my hands. And so they said, well, what about if you were to hold your hands together? And I thought, that's not ever going to be authentic for me. But I said, you know what? I'll try it. It doesn't always work. I put my hands in my pocket though, and that has worked, right? But at least there was this honest conversation about, even if you're across the room and I'm talking with my hands, it might, okay, let me work on that, right? And so that's where we can build trust in the workplace and really help with our balancing of home and life and in the job.
Yes. You mentioned earlier that we need to have boundaries.
Mm-hmm.
So what do you mean by that?
So interesting. We boundaries are often not always well appreciated. I will tell you that when I have this conversation with people, it really can be challenging for them. But boundaries is essentially the area in your life where you say, nope, this is kind of that imaginary line, right? I am not going to go. I'm not going to. Let's see. I'm thinking of a good boundary that I can put. Okay, I'm not going to read my emails on the weekend. Right? That's a boundary. I say nope. I'm not going to read my emails on the weekend. If I work Monday through Friday, then Saturday and Sunday are my home time, and so I'm not going to do that. Right? And so if you have a boss who says, "Oh, you know what? I need you to check your emails on Saturday." Thank you, Mrs. Boss. But actually, one of my boundaries for, my workplace is that I work Monday through Friday. I look at my emails then. I do not read my emails on Saturday, right? And so then there comes a conversation of what is the expectation of my role? Because I need to define my work hours. What does that look like, right? If my boundary is I'm not going to perform a specific activity. I was once asked to go visit a location that did not align with my moral compass. And I was nervous about it. I was very young and I was nervous. And I went to my boss and I said, I'm so sorry, but I can't do that. And if that means that I cannot work here, then I totally get it. But I cannot do that. And the supervisor said, okay, you know what? We'll have somebody else do it. I understand. So the idea is to be prepared to say, this is something that I'm not okay with and I'm not going to do. But you are the one that will identify that, right? So if you say, some places they'll tell you can't have your phone out, and they'll say, oh, I don't have my, you're not allowed to have your phone out on your desk. And, you can say, well, I have children, or I have a client who has special needs child who needs to be on the ready. Let's have a conversation with your supervisor about that. What does that look like? Maybe it's not necessarily about the phone. Maybe it's about the tone, right? The ringing. Maybe you can put it on vibrate. So there are things that you can look into. But the idea is that what is that line for you? What does that boundary look like for you so that you make sure that you're keeping yourself in a place of contentment and that you can communicate that to your supervisor?
Absolutely. I feel like if we don't set those boundaries and honor them, that's when burnout happens.
So, I many moons ago, I used to be a smoker, and I noticed that, at the workplace, the smokers go out, right? And they would smoke all the time, and the non-smokers are sitting at the desk. So when I quit smoking in the workplace, I started to get frustrated. Why do they get to go out and have, 4 and 5 cigarettes a day, and I'm stuck here by the desk? And I penned the term a non-smoke smoke break. And I would tell my team, you know what, I'm going to go have a non-smoke smoke break. And I would go outside and I'd walk around the building, or I'd walk down the road. And, here we are 15 years later. And I still say, I'm going to go have a non-smoke smoke break. And it's my way of saying, nope, this is important to me to give myself some, genuine vitamin D and walk out the building versus sit here and become disgruntled because other people are taking a break outside of the building.
Yep. I think that's a really common conflict in the workplace.
Mm-hmm.
I've heard that
Go
before.
for a non-smoke smoke break. It works.
There
it's
you
great.
go. Everyone gets a break.
Mm-hmm.
Well, good. Well, let's talk a little about the Family Life Center.
Sure. So the Family Life Center is the only certified domestic violence center and certified rape crisis program here in Flagler County. We are also the certified rape crisis center in Volusia County, and we operate a 24-hour emergency shelter, as well as a 24-hour crisis line for both divisions of our organization, which means that we will respond to any sexual assaults in the Volusia Flagler area for a sane accompaniment, which is the forensic exam. So we're on call 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. So when we talk about balance, that's a huge piece of how we continue to advocate and support victims, because we are on call all the time. And so we have been in the Flagler County area since 1987, and most people don't know that. So we've been around for a long time. I'm actually going into my 18th year of being with the organization and 15 years as their CEO. So I've had a long time. Thank you. It's been a long road.
Well, it's such meaningful work.
It is. I am very blessed to be able to do the work that I do and support the victims that we're able to support. And I say this, I have a great team of women and men who work with us. And, and over the years, we've had some wonderful people come and join us, and some wonderful people who've also left. And, because this is a tough profession. We talk about high burnout. The average length of stay for working in an emergency shelter with victims of domestic violence, so the staffing is about 2 years. Social work itself is about 2 to 4 years. So when I tell people that I've been doing this for 18 years, they're, nearly 18 years, they're amazed.
How do you protect yourself against that kind of energy?
So it's interesting. One of the first things is I will say I'm a faithful individual. And so I regularly check in with my faith system and my God. And so that's the first thing. The second thing is I spend a good amount of time with my family. My husband, my children. They genuinely provide the support and the love and the care. And I don't tell them what happens at work, but I'm able to see joy in them and hope for what the future is going to bring. So my family is a great source of support.
That's wonderful. I think you have to like your family to have that as a stress relief. I'm just kidding.
I do. No, I listen, and I do. I love my family. I like them most often. They're funny. There's enough of us though. If we get a little, again, those boundaries, right? I tell some people sometimes they're good to see for a long time. Sometimes we just have a little quick visit.
That's great. So somebody, having some workplace stress, when should they seek maybe some professional help?
So I often tell people that when you're at a place where you have some workplace stress, which happens on a regular basis, right? The idea is that if it begins to impact multiple domains of your life, and what I mean by that is if you're bringing work home and it's going on the ball field with the kids and you're noticing it in the car before and after work, right? If those things are happening, you may want to seek some additional professional assistance just to be able to process whatever it is that's going on. There are career counselors who can also talk about, is this the best fit for you? Is that the right workplace for you? There are career counselors and consultants that can help you find maybe a better fit that works for you to help minimize the stress that you're going through. But ultimately, if you're noticing yourself, those physical characteristics we talked about earlier, if you're noticing that, it may be time for you to seek some assistance.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I really want to thank you for joining me today. I learned a lot, and I hope our listeners did too.
Well, thank you for having me. This has been fun.
Thanks to our listeners for tuning in to Energize and Revitalize with Dr. Amy. If there are topics you would like to hear, please send an email to radiantpodcast2025@gmail.com. Check out past episodes on Amethyst Wellness YouTube, and please like and subscribe. I'll be back next Saturday morning at 7:30 with more expert insights and practical strategies to help you live your healthiest, most energized life. Until then, stay healthy, and here's to your best life.